Oh, hello. Welcome to the Haunting Hour, a scary story program intended for kids in grades 4 and up. Today, our story will be taken from The Nightmare Hour by R.L. Stine. It's called The Ghostly Stare. Mark and I didn't really want to go on the class trip to the graveyard, but it meant we got out of school, and that was always a good thing. The Greystone graveyard is at the end of our street. We pass by it every day on our way to and from school. It's a very old graveyard. It goes back to the Pilgrim days. The gravestones are all cracked and tilted and broken, and a lot of people say the place is haunted. Mark and I don't believe in ghosts, but we always walk on the other side of the street. Why take any chances? Mark and I are twins. People always try to be funny and ask, "Are you identical twins?" Ha ha, Mark is a boy and I'm a girl. We're Mark and Lauren, the Goodman twins. I like being a twin, except for the dumb jokes. It had snowed during the night, just enough to leave a thin, powdery cover on the ground. Our shoes crunched over the patchy snow as our social studies class stepped up to the old iron cemetery gate. The wind howled through the trees and made the bare branches whip around, sending showers of snow over us as we walked. I pulled up the hood on my down parka and slid my new gloves over my hands. I loved my gloves. My favorite aunt gave them to me on my 12th birthday. They were beautiful. Soft brown leather on the outside and lined with some kind of fur on the inside that made them toasty warm. "I hope everyone brought ghost repellent," Miss Applebaum, our teacher, called. Where does she come up with these crazy ideas? Going to an old cemetery on the coldest day of the year to do gravestone tracings. "Do you know what to do if you see a ghost?" Rachel Miller asked, pushing her way between Mark and me. "Yeah, run," Mark exclaimed. "No, that's exactly wrong," Rachel told him. "My grandmother taught me this. You give a ghost a ghostly stare." I rolled my eyes. A ghostly stare? What's that supposed to mean? Rachel stopped walking. She grabbed my shoulders and turned me toward her. Then she raised her eyebrows and opened her eyes as wide as they could go. "Lauren, this is a ghostly stare." Mark laughed. "You look like a geek." "Don't laugh," Rachel snapped. "It could save your life. My grandmother knew about these things. She said, never run. Instead, you stare into the ghost's eyes. Stare as deeply as you can, as if staring into the ghost's soul." Rachel gave Mark the wide-eyed stare. "Don't blink," she instructed. "Stare at the ghost's soul." "Why does that work?" I asked. "Because ghosts are dead," Rachel replied, still staring at Mark. "They don't have souls. Your stare goes right through them. They can't defend themselves from it. It makes them shrivel up and disappear." Rachel talked a mile a minute. She thinks she's an expert on everything. I don't really like Rachel. She pretends to be my friend, but I know it's only because she has a crush on Mark. "Can I be your partner, Lauren?" Rachel asked. "Miss Applebaum said we had to have partners. Do you believe in ghosts?" "I do. My grandmother told me she saw one rise up out of the old graves. Remember the Clavin's dog?" Mark said. "It used to prowl around the graveyard, and then one day it disappeared. Hillary Clavin said the ghost reached up from the grave and pulled the dog into the ground. Hillary saw it. That's why she started to stutter." I frowned at Mark. I'd never heard that story. I think he made it up to impress Rachel. Miss Applebaum opened the iron gate, and we followed her into the graveyard. Rows of black and gray gravestones poked up through the shallow snow. The old stones tilted at all angles like crooked teeth. Most of them were cracked and broken. Several had fallen over and lay on their backs, covered with snow. The old stones passed simple markers and crosses with no inscriptions at all. Leaning into the wind, Miss Applebaum led us up the sloping hill to some larger stones. Many had been rubbed smooth by time. Others had long inscriptions etched onto the stone. "Too cold for the ghosts to come out today," Miss Applebaum joked. "Let's get to work now, everybody." We split up. Rachel and I made our way around to the other side of the hill. I thought it might be less windy there, but I was wrong. A strong gust pushed back my hood. My long red hair flew up into the air like a flag. We crunched over the snow, bending to read the old inscriptions on the stones. Some of the gravestones were from the 1600s. Nothing too interesting here, Rachel complained. Let's try those old ones down there. We stopped at the first grave we came to. The tiny old stone was chipped and cracked. I knelt down to read the inscription, Abigail Wiley, 1680 to 1692. Rest in heaven, child. Wow, I cried, staring hard at the dates. Rachel, she was our age. Rachel leaned down to read it too. I wonder how she died, Lauren. Everyone died so young in those days. Rachel opened her backpack and pulled out the tracing paper pad. Let's do this one. It's a really cool one. The cold wind swirled around us. Rachel struggled to hold the paper against the stone so I could make a rubbing, but the paper kept flapping up in the strong gust. I'll help hold it down, I suggested. I pulled off my gloves, balled them together, and set them on top of the stone. Then I squatted down beside Rachel, and we worked together to do our tracing. We were just finishing when we saw Miss Applebaum come hurrying down the side of the hill, slipping on the snowy grass. I hate to cut this short, but we better go, she said, brushing her windblown hair out of her face. This was a bad idea. It's just too cold and windy today. We're all going to catch frostbite if we don't go back to school. Rachel and I packed up. I tugged the parka hood back over my head, then shivering, my feet frozen, my face tingling, I hurried to catch up with the others, eager to get out of the cold. It wasn't until after dinner that night that I realized I left my gloves in the graveyard. Mom and Dad were at their reading discussion group. Mark and I were supposed to be doing our homework, but we were watching TV. The local weather report had just come on. I jumped up and straightened my sweater. Mark, I have to go back to the graveyard and get my gloves. He looked up from his algebra workbook. You're kidding, right? They're my best gloves, I said. The warmest things I have. I love those gloves. I can't leave them there. Mark turned back to his workbook. We'll get them in the morning. No way, I insisted. They just said on TV it's going to snow later tonight. They'll be ruined. I opened the coat closet and pulled out my parka. Are you coming with me or not? He hesitated, chewing on his pencil. Finally, he spit the pencil out. Okay, I guess. Can't let you go alone. Macho Mark. The wind had died down, but the night air felt icy and damp. A tiny sliver of a moon winked down at us between black storm clouds. The thin layer of snow had crusted and hardened to ice. We kept slipping and sliding as we crossed the street. The low fence of Greystone Graveyard came into view. You remember where you left them? Mark asked. His face was hidden inside his big furry hood. He kept the beam of light from his flashlight ahead of us on the snow. I shivered. On top of a girl's gravestone, it'll only take a second. I grabbed the handle on the cemetery gate and pulled. The gate was stuck in the hardened snow. I tugged again with all my strength, and it creaked open. The yellow circle of light danced over the gravestones as Mark and I climbed the sloping hill. The storm clouds rolled over the moon, and heavy darkness swept over us. The air grew even more frigid. I rubbed my nose. It already felt numb. Down this hill, I said. All around us, trees creaked and groaned. The wind made an eerie sound, soft, like a human sigh. Slipping on the hard crust of snow, I led the way down to Abigail Wiley's grave. Here, I said. Mark pointed the beam of light. I stopped and squinted at the stone. They're gone, I cried, raising my hands to my frozen cheeks. The gloves aren't there. I left them on top of the stone. Mark shone the flashlight over the front of the stone. The wind probably blew them off. Search the ground. Oh, right. They must be on the ground, I muttered. I stepped around the grave, my eyes searching the crusty snow. The wind sighed again. The trees groaned and shook. I heard a shrill cry far in the distance. Probably a cat. Bending low, I circled the grave. Where are they? Maybe they blew down the hill, Mark suggested. He pulled the furry hood tighter over his face, then he walked slowly down the hill, sweeping the light from side to side over the ground. Where are they? Where are they? I repeated, rubbing my tingling nose, my frozen face. I almost bumped right into the girl. Her long, dark hair fell over her face, hiding it from view. She wore only a thin dress with long sleeves and a long pleated skirt down to the ground. She stood very stiff and erect, hands behind her back. Who are you? I gasped, and then a gust of wind blew the hair away from her face. Stared and stared in horror at her skeletal face. No skin, no lips over her broken teeth, no eyes, just empty eye sockets so deep and dark. "I'm Abigail," she croaked, her voice dry as sandpaper, dry as the crackling leaves. And then she lifted both arms. There was no skin on her arms either, only bone at the end of her gray, bony arms. Were my gloves. She took a silent step toward me as I stood there, frozen in horror. "I'm so cold," she moaned through her rotting teeth. "It's so cold here, Lauren." "Please," I whispered, staring at my gloves at the end of those bony arms. "I need your coat," she moaned, reaching out with both gloved hands, the empty eye sockets, the bony head tilting toward me beneath the blowing hair. "Lauren, I need your coat." "No, please!" I turned, looking everywhere for my brother. "Mark!" I cried when I saw him running full speed, arms flying in front of him, running from a tall skeleton in a flapping black overcoat. "Get going," I ordered myself. "Lauren, go now!" But my legs were shaking too hard. They wouldn't move. "Lauren, I need your sweater." "No, stop!" The fingers inside my gloves grabbing for me. "Lauren, I need your clothes. Lauren, it's so cold here. I need your coat. I need your sweater." "No, get away from me!" I shrieked. "Lauren, I need your shoes." The gloved hands grabbed at my hair. "Lauren, I need your skin." The gloved hands caught my hair and started to pull. "Let me go! Let me go!" "Lauren, I need your skin. Lauren, I need your body." "Ah!" A moan of horror escaped through my throat, and Rachel's words flashed through my mind. The ghostly stare. The advice Rachel's grandmother gave her: don't run. Stare into the ghost's eyes. Stare as if searching for its soul. Would it work? I had no choice. Abigail's ghost was pulling me closer. I jerked my head back, raised my eyes to her empty sockets, and stared. I stared wide-eyed, without blinking, into those deep, dark holes. Stared as if I was searching for Abigail's soul. She stopped pulling. We both froze like graveyard statues. Her bony jaw made a cracking sound and dropped open. Her scraggly dark hair flew straight out from her skull. "Lauren," she moaned. "Lauren." And then her gloved hands let go of my hair and dropped to the sides of her rotting, stained dress. And still I stared without blinking, stared deep into those empty holes where her eyes had once been. The ghostly stare. She started to sink, lower, lower. Her hair settled over her face again. Her bony shoulders crackled as they slumped into the dress. Lower, I watched her drop behind a gravestone and sink back into her grave. "Lauren," she whispered my name one more time, and then she was gone. I started to breathe again, sucking in long, cold breaths, and then I ran. My shoes thudded over the crusted snow. To my relief, I heard Mark running right behind me, our shoes pounding together like drum beats. I didn't stop or slow down until we reached home. I burst through the front door, my heart pounding, my sides aching, staggering into my living room. I bent over, pressed my hands to my knees, struggled to catch my breath. "The stare," I said. "I can't believe it. It worked. The ghostly stare. You used it too, right?" Still panting hard, I turned to look back at him and screamed. A shrill scream of horror as I stared at the ragged black overcoat, the skeletal face, the fat brown worms curling from an open, toothless mouth, the bald, rutted skull, the deep, empty eye sockets. "Where's Mark? What did you do to Mark?" I screamed. "You don't belong here. Where is Mark?" The jaw creaked open, and a cloud of sour air escaped from deep inside the ghost's rotting belly. "Where is my brother?" I wailed. "Is he back in the graveyard? What do you want? What do you want?" Before I could move, the ghost slid over the wall. He raised a bony hand to the light switch and clicked off the light. We were in total darkness now. "Why did you do that?" I whispered. "Lauren, it isn't polite to stare," he growled. And then I felt his hard, bony fingers wrap around my throat. "Lauren, I'm so cold, he rasped. Lauren, I need your hair. Lauren, I need your sweater. Lauren, I need your skin. The end. A word to the wise. It isn't responsible to go into graveyards and do gravestone rubbings. The pressure of the paper and the crayon or the charcoal over the stones can damage them. And we want to keep our local graveyards in tip-top conditions. So this Halloween, I advise you to go to the graves, pay your respects, and if you think a particular gravestone is very beautiful, take a picture. It'll last longer.